I was standing by the window of my two-bedroom apartment watching the sun set over downtown Portland, feeling genuinely content with the life I had built. The phone buzzed on my coffee table, displaying Mom on the screen. My finger hovered over the decline button. 12 years of silence stretched between us like an ocean I had never wanted to cross again. But something made me answer. Her voice trembled through the speaker. "Veronica, honey, could Madison and her family possibly stay with you for a while? We really need your help." The words hit me like a freight train, and suddenly I was 16 again, standing outside my childhood home with nothing but a duffel bag and shattered dreams. Truok kitoi ke choban he kauchuyen nai hai chotoi biet ban jang sem tu jaun he jung quen han like va subscribe je khong bolon hung kauchuyen hute nai. Bai gyo hai kung toi kwai venam 2012 hitat ka bat jao. The year was 2012 and Madison and I had just turned 16. We were juniors at Roosevelt High School, living in what everyone considered a picture-perfect middle-class family. Dad worked as a mechanical engineer at Boeing. Mom was a registered nurse at Providence Hospital, and we lived in a colonial house with a white picket fence in Beaverton. From the outside, we looked like the American dream. But inside those walls, the reality was starkly different. Madison and I might have shared the same DNA, but we were complete opposites in every way that mattered. While I spent my evenings hunched over textbooks at our shared desk, highlighting passages and taking meticulous notes, Madison would sneak out through our bedroom window to meet friends at house parties. I maintained a perfect 4.0 grade point average and tutored younger students for extra money. Madison barely scraped by with C- grades and spent her allowance on makeup and trendy clothes. The favoritism in our household was not subtle. It was glaring, obvious, and soul-crushing. When Madison accidentally knocked over our big-screen television during one of her dramatic tantrums about curfew, I somehow became the target of our parents' anger. "Veronica, you are older by 4 minutes." Mom lectured me while Madison sobbed crocodile tears on the couch. "You should have been watching out for your sister. This would not have happened if you had been more responsible." When Madison failed algebra for the second time, Dad immediately hired a private tutor who came to our house 3 times a week at $60 per session. When I struggled with advanced chemistry, I was told to figure it out myself or ask a classmate. "You are smart enough to handle it," Dad said dismissively. "Madison needs more support because learning does not come as easily to her." Our 16th birthday perfectly encapsulated the inequality. Madison got a surprise party with 30 friends, a professional DJ catered food, and a brand new iPhone. My celebration consisted of a store-bought cupcake and a card with $50 inside. When I pointed out the disparity, Mom simply said, "Madison has more friends, honey. It would be cruel to leave them out." The real trouble began when Madison started dating Tyler Richardson, an 18-year-old high school dropout who worked sporadically at a gas station. Tyler had bleached blonde hair, multiple tattoos, and rode a motorcycle that he revved loudly in our driveway at all hours. I tried warning my parents about his influence on Madison, but they accused me of being jealous and controlling. "You need to support your sister's happiness," Mom told me after I expressed concerns about Tyler encouraging Madison to skip classes. "Just because you do not have a boyfriend does not mean you should sabotage Madison's relationship." Madison began staying out until 3 in the morning on school nights. Her grades plummeted from mediocre to failing. She started coming home reeking of cigarettes and alcohol, but our parents turned a blind eye. "Teenagers experiment," Dad rationalized. "It is a normal phase." Meanwhile, I was working harder than ever. I had my sights set on early admission to college with a full scholarship. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Peterson, had been helping me prepare applications for months. I spent every free moment studying volunteering at the animal shelter and participating in academic competitions. The future felt bright and attainable. In November, I submitted my early decision application to Oregon State University with a comprehensive portfolio showcasing 4 years of academic excellence. I had earned a 1520 on my SATs, maintained perfect attendance, and served as president of the National Honor Society. The full-ride scholarship would cover tuition, room, board, and books. It represented everything I had worked toward. 3 weeks later, on a cold December morning, Madison came downstairs to the kitchen where our family was eating breakfast. She had been unusually quiet for several days, which should have been our first warning sign. Tyler stood behind her with his arm protectively around her shoulders, looking uncharacteristically serious. "I have something important to tell everyone," Madison announced, her voice shaky. She took a deep breath and blurted out, "I am pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom dropped her coffee mug, sending ceramic shards across the tile floor. Dad's newspaper fell from his hands. The world seemed to stop spinning. That same afternoon, I received the phone call I had been anxiously awaiting for weeks. Oregon State University was offering me a full scholarship with early admission to their honors program. It was everything I had dreamed of, everything I had earned through years of dedication and sacrifice. I rushed home bursting with excitement, ready to share the incredible news with my family. But when I walked through the front door, I found them huddled around the kitchen table with pamphlets about prenatal care and teen pregnancy support groups spread across the surface. "Mom, Dad, I got the scholarship," I announced breathlessly. "Full ride to Oregon State. They want me to start in the fall." The response was not what I had imagined. Mom barely glanced up from a brochure about nutrition during pregnancy. "That is nice, dear," she said absently. "Right now we need to focus on Madison and the baby. This is not the time for distractions." Dad nodded in agreement. "College will always be there, Veronica. Your sister needs our support right now. Family comes first." The dismissal stung like a physical slap. 4 years of perfect grades, countless hours of studying, and the achievement of my biggest goal meant nothing compared to Madison's unplanned pregnancy. Within days of Madison's announcement, our household dynamics shifted completely. Madison appointed herself as the queen of the house, using her pregnancy as justification for avoiding any and all responsibilities. She would lie on the living room couch from morning until night, surrounded by snack wrappers and empty soda cans, watching reality television shows at maximum volume. "Veronica, can you make me a grilled cheese sandwich?" became her constant refrain. When I reminded her that she was perfectly capable of making her own food, she would immediately burst into tears and call for Mom. "The doctor said I need to avoid stress." Madison would sob dramatically. "Standing in the kitchen makes me dizzy. The smells make me nauseous." Mom fell for this performance every single time. "Pregnancy is incredibly difficult, Veronica." She would lecture me. "Your sister is carrying precious cargo. The least you can do is help out around the house." Soon I found myself doing all of Madison's chores in addition to my own. I cooked her meals, cleaned her room, did her laundry, and even cleaned the bathroom that she and Tyler used exclusively. Meanwhile, Madison's only contribution was pointing out things I had allegedly done wrong. "You folded my shirts incorrectly," she would complain. "The creases are not straight, and you used the wrong detergent. My skin is sensitive now because of the pregnancy." The situation deteriorated further when Tyler basically moved into our house without any formal discussion or agreement. He claimed it was temporary, just until he could find a better job and get his own place. But weeks turned into months, and Tyler showed no signs of leaving or even looking for employment. Tyler commandeered our shared bedroom, claiming that Madison needed the larger space and better lighting for her health. I was relegated to a blow-up mattress in the living room, trying to sleep while Tyler played video games until 3 a.m. with his friends online. The constant noise made it impossible to get adequate rest, and my grades began to suffer for the first time in my academic career. "Can you please keep it down?" I asked him one night after he had been shouting at his television screen for 2 hours straight. "I have an advanced placement exam tomorrow morning." Tyler looked at me with contempt and laughed. "This is not your house anymore, princess. Madison and I live here now. Maybe you should find somewhere else to study." When I brought this issue to my parents, they sided with Tyler and Madison once again. He is the father of our grandchild, Dad explained. We need to make him feel welcome here. You can study at the library if the house is too noisy. The library became my sanctuary, but it closed at 9 p.m. on weeknights. I often found myself sitting in my car in the parking lot afterward, trying to finish homework assignments by the dim overhead light. My back ached from the uncomfortable position, and my grades continued to slide despite my best efforts. Tyler also helped himself to our food without contributing a single dollar to the grocery budget. He would eat entire packages of lunch meat, drink all the milk, and finish off leftovers that Mom had specifically prepared for family dinners. When I mentioned that I had been planning to eat the last piece of pizza for lunch, Tyler shrugged and said, "Snooze you lose." To make matters worse, I had to get a part-time job at Tony's Pizza to earn money for college application fees and other expenses. I worked 25 hours per week on top of my full course load and extracurricular commitments. Every penny I earned went toward SAT prep courses, application fees, and school supplies that my parents refused to purchase. Madison needs new maternity clothes, Mom explained when I asked for help buying graphing calculator required for calculus. Your needs will have to wait. The breaking point came in February, when Madison made an outrageous demand that revealed just how entitled she had become. She was sitting at the kitchen table absent-mindedly rubbing her barely visible pregnancy bump when she looked up at me with serious eyes. "I have been thinking," she said slowly. "I really need you to stay home next year instead of going to college. I am going to need help with the baby, and I trust you more than anyone else." I stared at her in disbelief. "What are you talking about? I am not giving up my scholarship." Madison's eyes filled with tears, and her lower lip began to quiver. "But I am scared, Veronica. What if something goes wrong? What if I do not know how to take care of a baby? Tyler works during the day, and Mom and Dad have their own jobs. I need someone here with me." Before I could respond, both of our parents entered the kitchen and immediately noticed Madison's distressed state. Without asking for context or explanation, they turned to me with accusatory expressions. "What did you say to upset your sister?" Mom demanded. When I explained Madison's request, instead of recognizing how unreasonable it was, they both nodded thoughtfully, as if it made perfect sense. "Actually," Dad said slowly, "that might not be such a bad idea. College will always be available, but Madison only gets one chance to be a first-time mother. Families should stick together during important times like this." Mom chimed in with her agreement. "Besides, you could take some community college courses part-time while helping with the baby. It would be much more affordable than a 4-year university." I felt like I was living in an alternate reality where everything I had worked for meant nothing, and Madison's poor choices were somehow my responsibility to fix. The final explosion came on a cold March evening that I will never forget as long as I live. It was the night before I had to submit my final response to Oregon State University about accepting their scholarship offer. I had been procrastinating the decision for weeks, hoping desperately that my family would come to their senses and support my dreams. I stayed up late in the living room, working on an important essay for my advanced placement English class. Mrs. Johnson had assigned a complex analysis of symbolism in The Great Gatsby, and I needed a perfect score to maintain my grade point average. The essay was worth 30% of our semester grade. I had spent hours crafting each paragraph analyzing Fitzgerald's use of the green light as a symbol of unattainable dreams and the corruption of the American dream. The irony was not lost on me as I wrote about characters whose hopes were crushed by circumstances beyond their control. Around midnight, I finally finished the 10-page analysis and saved it to my laptop. I felt proud of the work I had produced despite all the chaos surrounding me. The essay represented everything I loved about literature and critical thinking. I planned to print it first thing in the morning and turn it in early to show Mrs. Johnson my dedication. At 12:30 in the morning, Madison and Tyler came stumbling through the front door, clearly intoxicated, and making no effort to be quiet. They were laughing loudly and bumping into furniture as they made their way through the house. I was still awake reviewing my essay one final time when they entered the living room. Madison was carrying a large gas station fountain drink, the kind that holds 32 ounces of soda. She was gesticulating wildly as she told Tyler some apparently hilarious story about their evening. And then Jessica totally face-planted right into the punch bowl. Madison shrieked with laughter, throwing her arms up dramatically. The motion sent her drink flying through the air in a perfect arc. I watched in slow-motion horror as 32 ounces of Coca-Cola splashed directly onto my laptop keyboard. The screen immediately went black, and I could hear the hard drive making terrible grinding noises. My essay, I screamed frantically, trying to turn the laptop back on. My entire essay was on there. Madison looked at the soaked computer and shrugged carelessly. Oops. Sorry about that. Accidents happen. Her tone was completely dismissive, as if she had merely knocked over an empty cup. Accidents happen. I repeated, my voice rising to a pitch I had never heard before. Madison, that essay is due tomorrow morning. I spent 8 hours writing it. It is worth 30% of my grade. For the first time in my life, I completely lost my composure. All the frustration, resentment, and hurt that I had been suppressing for months came pouring out in a torrent of angry words. You have ruined everything, I shouted. You get pregnant, and suddenly the entire world has to revolve around you. I am sick of doing your chores. Sick of Tyler eating our food. Sick of sleeping on the floor while you two take over my room. I am tired of being treated like a servant in my own house. Madison's face crumpled, and she began crying hysterically. How can you be so mean to me? She sobbed. I am pregnant. This is supposed to be a happy time. You are supposed to be supportive. Tyler stepped forward aggressively. Hey, watch how you talk to her, he warned. She is carrying my kid. Show some respect. Respect? I laughed bitterly. What about respecting my need to sleep? What about respecting my food in the refrigerator? What about respecting my college dreams? The commotion woke our parents, who came downstairs in their bathrobes, looking annoyed and concerned. When they saw Madison crying and Tyler holding her protectively, their expressions immediately hardened as they looked at me. What is going on down here? Dad demanded. Why is Madison crying? I tried to explain about my essay and the laptop, but they were not interested in hearing my side of the story. The sight of their precious pregnant daughter in tears was all the evidence they needed to determine who was at fault. Veronica Marie Johnson, Mom said in her most severe voice, I cannot believe you would raise your voice at your sister when she is in such a delicate condition. Do you have any idea how dangerous stress can be for a pregnant woman? But she destroyed my essay, I protested. She ruined my laptop. How am I supposed to graduate if I cannot turn in my assignments? Dad waved his hand dismissively. It was an accident. You can rewrite the essay. But if Madison loses this baby, because you stressed her out, that cannot be undone. The conversation that followed was the most painful of my entire life. My parents laid out an ultimatum that forced me to choose between everything I had worked for and the family that was supposed to love and support me. You need to decide what is more important, Mom said coldly. Your family or your selfish ambitions. If you cannot be supportive of Madison during this crucial time, then maybe you do not belong in this house. We have bent over backwards to accommodate your attitude, Dad added. But this ends now. Either you commit to helping your sister and forget about this college nonsense, or you need to find somewhere else to live. Tyler smirked from behind Madison and added his own cruel commentary. Yeah, maybe it is time for the princess to face reality. Not everyone gets to live in a fairy tale. Madison, who could have defended me or told our parents the truth about what had been happening, simply stood there silently. She watched as they tore apart my dreams and said absolutely nothing. I looked around at these people who were supposed to be my family, and I realized that I had never meant as much to them as Madison did. The choice they were forcing me to make was not really a choice at all. Fine, I said quietly. I choose college. I choose my future. I choose myself. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Dad's face turned red with anger, and Mom gasped as if I had physically struck her. Then you have 2 hours to pack your things and get out, Dad said icily. If that is your decision, then you are no longer welcome in this house. I spent the next 2 hours throwing my belongings into a duffel bag, while my family watched television in the living room as if nothing had happened. I packed my clothes, my books, my photographs, and the few personal items that mattered to me. Everything else had to be left behind. At 3 a.m, I stood on the front porch with my single bag looking back at the house where I had grown up. The windows glowed warmly with yellow light, and I could see the silhouettes of my family inside. Madison was back on the couch, Tyler had his arm around her, and my parents were fussing over them both. I realized that they were not going to come after me. They were not going to change their minds or apologize, or suddenly realize they had made a terrible mistake. I was truly on my own. The next morning I showed up at school with red swollen eyes and nowhere to go. Mrs. Peterson, my guidance counselor, immediately noticed that something was wrong. When I explained my situation, she insisted that I stay at her house temporarily while we figured out a long-term solution. No student with your potential should have to choose between family and education, she told me firmly. We will make this work. Mrs. Peterson helped me contact Oregon State University to explain my circumstances. The admissions office was incredibly understanding and even connected me with resources for students from difficult family situations. They assured me that my scholarship was secure and that they had support systems in place for students who were financially independent. For 2 weeks, I slept on Mrs. Peterson's couch and borrowed clothes that her college-aged daughter had left behind. During this time, I applied for every job I could find and looked for affordable housing near campus. The transition was terrifying, but also liberating in a way I had not expected. I found a job waiting tables at a family restaurant called Denny's, working 40 hours per week, while finishing my senior year of high school. The work was exhausting, but my co-workers became like a second family. They celebrated when I graduated valedictorian and threw me a small party before I left for college. My first apartment was a tiny studio above a laundromat near the Oregon State campus. It smelled like detergent and fabric softener, but it was mine. I furnished it with items from thrift stores and garage sales. My bed was a mattress on the floor. My desk was a folding table, and my bookshelf was made from cinder blocks and wooden planks. College was challenging in ways I had never imagined. While other students worried about social events and dating, I worked 2 part-time jobs to cover living expenses that my scholarship did not include. I washed dishes at a campus cafe in the morning and tutored struggling students in the evening, but I thrived academically. My professors recognized my dedication and work ethic. I earned a spot on the dean's list every semester and was invited to join the Phi Beta Kappa Honor Society. In my junior year, I was selected for a prestigious internship at a financial planning firm in Portland. The internship changed everything. I discovered that I had a natural aptitude for financial analysis and investment planning. The firm offered me a part-time position during my senior year and a full-time job upon graduation with a starting salary that seemed impossibly generous after years of living paycheck to paycheck. After graduation, I moved to Portland and threw myself into building a career. I worked 60-hour weeks, earned professional certifications, and steadily climbed the corporate ladder. Within 5 years, I had been promoted to senior financial analyst, with a salary that allowed me to buy a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in the Pearl District. During those years, I occasionally heard updates about my family through mutual acquaintances from my hometown. Madison had given birth to a healthy baby girl named Emma. Tyler had lasted about 2 years before abandoning them both for another woman. Madison had struggled as a single mother while living with our parents. Eventually, Madison met and married James, a decent man who worked in construction. They had 2 more children together, a boy and another girl. For a while, it seemed like Madison had found stability and happiness. But 6 months ago, James lost his job when the construction company he worked for went out of business. With 3 children to support and no steady income, Madison's family quickly fell behind on their mortgage payments. My parents, who had retired early and were living on fixed incomes, could not provide the financial assistance that Madison desperately needed. Which brought us to the phone call that had started this entire reflection. After 12 years of complete silence, my mother was reaching out because they needed something from me. Veronica. Mom had said during that first conversation, "I know we have not spoken in a long time, but Madison and the children are about to lose their house. They have nowhere else to go." I let her talk for several minutes, listening as she described Madison's financial struggles and the 3 children who would be homeless if something did not change soon. She painted a picture of desperation and crisis, clearly hoping to appeal to whatever family loyalty might still exist in my heart. When she finished her plea, there was a long pause. I looked around my peaceful apartment with its hardwood floors and granite countertops and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Everything in my space reflected the life I had built through my own determination and hard work. "I understand that Madison is in a difficult situation," I said carefully. "But I need you to understand something too. When you forced me to choose between family and my future, I chose my future. I have built a life that works for me, and I am not willing to compromise it." Mom tried to interrupt with protests and explanations, but I continued speaking. "For 12 years, none of you cared whether I was alive or dead. You did not call when I graduated college with honors. You did not call when I got my first promotion. You did not call when I bought my apartment. The only reason you are calling now is because you need something from me." I took a deep breath and delivered my final decision. "I have worked too hard to create a stable, peaceful life to invite chaos back into it. Madison made her choices just like I made mine. I wish her well, but I cannot and will not rescue her from the consequences of her decisions." The conversation ended with Mom crying and accusing me of being heartless and selfish. She hung up without saying goodbye. Over the following weeks, I heard through the hometown grapevine that Madison's family had eventually found temporary housing with friends. Mom and Dad had taken out a second mortgage on their house to help with expenses. The crisis had passed without my intervention. I realized that my family had survived just fine without me, just as I had survived just fine without them. The difference was that I had built my independence through hard work and determination, while they had simply found other people to depend on. The experience reinforced something I had learned during my years of struggle. Sometimes the family you choose loves you better than the family you are born into. My chosen family includes my mentor, Mrs. Peterson, my colleagues, who supported me through difficult times, and friends who celebrate my successes without jealousy or resentment. These are people who value education, hard work, and personal growth. They do not ask me to sacrifice my dreams to enable someone else's irresponsibility. They love me for who I am, not for what I can provide them. I have built a life filled with purpose, stability, and genuine relationships. My apartment is my sanctuary, a place where I can read, think, and plan for the future without drama or conflict. My career provides not just financial security, but intellectual fulfillment and opportunities for continued growth. Most importantly, I have learned to love and respect myself enough to say no when necessary. Setting boundaries is not cruel or selfish. It is essential for maintaining mental health and personal integrity. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had given up my scholarship and stayed home to help raise Madison's children. I would probably still be living in my childhood bedroom, working a minimum wage job, and watching my dreams fade away year by year. Instead, I am proud of the woman I have become. I earned every promotion, every dollar in my bank account, and every moment of peace in my carefully constructed life. No one can take that away from me, because I did not depend on anyone else to achieve it. The phone call from my mother taught me that I had truly healed from the wounds of my childhood. I no longer felt angry or hurt by their treatment of me. I simply felt indifferent, which was perhaps the most powerful response of all. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own dreams? What would you do if the people who hurt you came back asking for help years later? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family drama and building the life you deserve. Do not forget to share this video with anyone who might need to hear that it is okay to put yourself first sometimes. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that your worth is not determined by how much you sacrifice for others. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to walk away and build something better.